Travels of the Ellis Arbor is an audio narrative set in the world of Bastion using 5e compatible characters. A dark fantasy world with chaos, intrigue, magic, and mystery. The story, setting, and sounds are written by Lonomy and published by Lonomy Creative. Tune in for episode 3, Chase. Stepping round the edge of the road, Darian drew his crew close, ushering them from the approaching eyes of the town guard. Whether they had been spotted or were sought after, they couldn't say. The imminence of the matter was tangible as the entire crew kept eyes upon the three. 2 guards and the hobgoblin wizard. Against the fiery, infernal visage of horns, fur, and tail, a well-tailored leather coat of patchwork patterns and a heavy overcoat obscured much of the implements underneath. He walked with heavy footfalls, belying the arcane accoutrement at his waist and in his pockets. The staff he carried was warped in unusual angles, twisting and knotting itself around the middle as if built for his particular frame. Accenting the walk was a heavy metallic scraping as the gladius upon his hip jangled with every laboured step.
"That's him, isn't it, Captain? It's been some time since I've seen that face, but I would recognize that smell anywhere."
Newt shuffled behind Darian as he clambered for his own weapons, a long, elaborate spear thrust into the ground in preparation.
Yes, it is him. Don't bring your weapons to bear. He wouldn't dare attack us in the street. Nor would we. We are pirates, but don't you think that our breakfast engagement is enough for now?
As the captain turned toward Newt, an arcane hum began to whistle from his fingertips as the spear lifted from the ground, hovering a few feet before floating gently at the artificer's side.
"Be that as it may, I will not leave myself open to assault again. He fooled us once and locked you in jail. I will not see that happen to you or to the others."
Newt turned toward both Moore and Ed, who sheepishly began to poke their heads out from behind debris scattered from broken crates and debris that had once held foodstuffs or supplies. The Myconid began to lower himself beneath the pile, as if in brusque defiance of being given any sort of orders. It would appear that they both would rather avoid conflict where possible.
Fine, Ed. You and Moore stay here and keep out of sight. Newt, double back to the gatehouse. Make sure we have a clear path to the beach, if necessary. If we are going to have this meeting, I'd rather it be while Carpathian is in those manacles.
Darian quickly pulled a pistol from his belt, poured out the empty shell casing, and replaced it with another silver bullet. Turning the barrel and clicking it firmly in place, he holstered it once again and barked his orders once more.
Go, now, do as I say. We will not have this chance again.
At once, the crew hopped into action. Ed and Moore ducking behind the debris and making ready, while Newt scuttled off toward the southern exit. As he did, he drew a circular metal plate from his rucksack, placed a series of stones into its hearth, and it lit with magical energy. Placing it into the air, it floated a few feet above the ground and began to glow as if newly enchanted. With poise, he stepped upon the floating disc, which shifted to allow his weight. Following his command, the disc then carried Newt toward his position without so much of a whisper of sound. Tapping the hammer at his belt a few times, Darian then turned toward the corner where the guards now approached. Confidently, he strode out toward them, all the while tapping his hammer and scraping his heel against the stone. It was clear that he had done this many times before, exuding confidence and hubris with every step.
Good fellows and protectors, I have a question if you would permit me the time. My companions and I wish to lodge at the nearby inn. Could you point us in the direction of where we could purchase a city permit?
As he stepped, he continued to tap out a simple rhythm. All the while, his eyes glanced toward the wizard, chained between them. Carpathian's eyes had now met his, glowing with that same fiery heat. The hobgoblin's mouth turned from a look of fierce displeasure to a sickly and knowing grin. Well, isn't this a surprise? Surely a place like this is far too commonplace and filthy for a wealthy, ruthless pirate such as yourself. With the brash tone of his voice, the noise throughout the street seemed to hush at his words. Carpathian pulled his chains taut as the guards stopped at their conversation. You know this wizard? What is this about being a pirate? As the words left the guard's mouth, the other guard began to place a hand on his sword, unsheathing it quietly.
A pirate? My goodness, no. We once had a vessel, for sure, but it was sourly turned against the rocks of the beach. We now simply wish to lodge and collect our bearings. It has been a long journey.
Hush your silky words! What do you know of this one? He is our charge and he is to be taken to court for damages to civic property. If you know him, we would have you tell us. The guard now began to pull his sword free as he spoke, tipping the blade toward Carpathian.
He seems familiar, but no more than any hobgoblin that I have seen. Perhaps I could continue with you and you could point me toward the counselor's office.
Darian's tapping became more and more insistent as he spoke, echoing as if it were reverberating between the houses nearby. At this, the guards began to pay attention to the noise, both now pointing their swords toward the captain.
Or perhaps you have some usefulness, wizard. Perhaps you could point us in the direction of the nearby civil dispute.
A flash and a clang of steel. The spell Darian had been casting was complete. The ringing turned to a rush of wind, gathering in a maelstrom around him. Drawing his weapon, his body now born of magical wind, as he cleared the distance between he and the guards in but an instant. Throwing his hammer to the left, he buried it deep in the plate mail of the first guard, sending him off his feet, backward and into the nearby stone wall. The second guard slashed downward toward the captain, but he was too quick. Spinning to meet the blade, he parried to the side, sending the sword clattering toward the ground. A swift kick sent this guard backward a few paces, but he steeled himself and drew a dagger at his waist. His hands now free, Carpathian turned toward the guard, his fingers drawing an arcane sigil as heat was drawn from the air toward his fingers. The dagger in the guard's hand began to glow brightly as flames erupted from the tip. In fear, the armored figure threw the dagger to the ground, clutching his hand as the flames had burned through his protective gloves.
Do not think to follow us.
Another firm kick, this time colliding with the center of the guard's abdomen. The guard toppled over, now clutching his stomach in response to this brutish assault. As quick as this exchange was, the street erupted with noise as a bell began to throng, loud enough for all to cover their ears. The sound of armor and steel being drawn as from up the hill, a handful of town guards sprung into action. A few began to knock bolts into their crossbows, while others barked orders and directed the garrison toward the crew's position. Not quite the welcoming party I'd hoped for, though not at all surprising. With the same finesse in which he had brought the guards low, Darian drew his loaded pistol, firmly placing it into the cheek of their wizard companion. Another noise from you, and I will do the town a favor. Hands now raised in surrender, the wizard clutched his staff and pulled at his chains. Understood, Captain. Turning now toward the alleyway, the captain called his crew to bear.
Ed, cover our escape. Make for the beach. With haste!
In moments, the street was filled with the clanging of metal and heavy footfalls as no less than a dozen guards made for their position. Grabbing him by the manacles, Darian hoisted the wizard toward the road and made for the exit. As he did, a myriad of crossbow bolts began to sail towards their position. One sailed dangerously close to his right leg, clattering on the ground in front of him. Another dug into the ground with a heavy thump, taking a small portion of Carpathian's tail with it. He growled in pain, but was pulled again by the captain, down toward the exit of the briny ward. As they rounded the corner, Ed stepped out a few feet from his hiding position, his marvelous weapon, Pulse, drawn aloft as he wound the mechanical device. The clockwork hinge began to sing as lightning began to arc off the barrel. Aiming low, he pulled the trigger as a bolt of crackling blue energy sailed toward the platoon of guards. Catching one on the boot, the lightning energy sailed upward toward the plate mail, shocking the guard in place. In a moment, the energy arced off toward two other guards, sending them hurtling toward the stone in a brilliant display. Turning toward the captain, Ed was lifted off his feet as the now engorged, muscular form of Moore lifted him by the waist, carrying him onward. The sound of battle now permeated the street. Crossbow fire rained down and the dramatic clash of electricity met them as the crew of the Elisaba began to rush toward the beach once more. Travels of the Elisaba is made possible by the generous support of our subscribers, followers, and most notably, our patrons. Thanks to Rob Jenkin, Ensign Turtle, and Nathan Ebley for supporting us so far on this journey. Please subscribe, give a like or a comment, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned for the next episode. Don't forget, take care of each other.